We've all been there, right? That sinking feeling in your gut when you suddenly realize you've missed a prayer. The guilt can just be overwhelming. But here's the question. Is it always a sin? Let's find out what the classical teachings actually say about when you might be excused. You know that moment of panic? It's so real. You're just left wondering, was that a genuine mistake? Or was it something, well, more serious? The good news is there are some really clear answers, and honestly, they might surprise you. So, what's the bottom line? According to classical Islamic scholarship, it really boils down to just two main valid excuses for missing a prayer. So let's break down exactly what they are and, just as important, what they are not.
But hang on, before we jump into the specifics, we have to get our heads around the foundation for these rulings. This isn't about finding loopholes, not at all. It's about a core principle of the faith.
And that principle is mercy. This simple statement you see here, this is the key to everything. The entire framework for these excuses is built on divine mercy, on an understanding of our human limitations. The rules are there to guide us, for sure, but they are not without compassion. So when we use this term valid excuse, what are we actually talking about? Well, in Islamic law, or fiqh, it's a specific legally accepted reason that actually removes the sin from an action, like delaying prayer. But you gotta notice that last part, provided specific conditions are met. And that's what we're about to explore.
Okay, so let's tackle the first and, probably the most common reason people miss a prayer. Sleep. We all have to do it. But when does sleeping through a prayer actually count as a valid excuse? It turns out the timing is everything. As you can see here, there's a really sharp distinction. If you fell asleep before the prayer time even started and you just slept right through it, you're excused. That's a valid reason. But if the prayer time had already begun and then you decided to go to sleep, well, the whole situation changes. That is not considered a valid excuse. And that brings up a pretty obvious question, doesn't it? I mean, life happens. Maybe you're completely exhausted after a long day and the Isha prayer time has just started. What's the ruling in that kind of situation? And this table here illustrates the nuance so well. Look, if you lie down after the prayer time has started and you're just so tired that you have no confidence you'll wake up, then doing that is considered prohibited. But if you take precautions, like setting a really loud, reliable alarm, and you're pretty certain you will wake up for it, then the action is considered disliked, but not necessarily sinful. It's all about your intention and the real effort you make. All right, let's move on to the second valid excuse, forgetfulness. And just like with sleep, this one can be tricky because it all comes down to the root cause. Why did you forget? See, if you were just going about your day and it genuinely, honestly slipped your mind, that's a valid excuse. Humans forget things. But if that forgetfulness was actually the result of neglect, like you were so absorbed in playing video games that you just didn't care to remember, then that's considered sinful. The origin of the forgetfulness is what really matters here. Okay, so here is the single most crucial point, and it applies to both of these excuses, sleep and forgetfulness. The moment that excuse is lifted, the second you wake up or the second you remember, you are required to perform that prayer immediately, right away. There's no, oh, I'll do it in a bit. The excuse covers the delay, but the obligation to pray clicks right back into place instantly. Now, there is one more special situation that's worth mentioning, but it applies more specifically to the case of a traveler. It's kind of in its own category. So, for those who are on a legitimate journey, there's a specific allowance, a concession, to combine certain prayers. You can delay the Dhuhr prayer to perform it with Asr, for example. This is a very distinct mercy that's granted to ease the difficulties of travel, and it's separate from those other excuses of sleep or forgetfulness we talked about. So we've covered sleep, we've covered forgetfulness, and that special case for the traveler. So what's the big takeaway here? It all boils down to this beautiful balance between divine mercy and our own personal responsibility. So here's what that looks like for you. First, be proactive. Plan your day around prayer times so you can avoid neglect in the first place. Second, you have to be honest with yourself about the difference between a real excuse and just plain carelessness. Third, and always remember this one, when the excuse ends, you pray immediately. And finally, just try to see all of this as a balance between God's mercy for our human weakness and our personal responsibility to just do our best. And that leaves us with a final thought to really reflect on. When we truly understand that these rules are framed by mercy, how does that shift our own attitude towards our responsibilities? Does it make us more accountable, maybe more grateful, and even more diligent in our worship? Just knowing that compassion is always there to catch us when we genuinely, truly falter.